Welcome to Comeback Tales. Tonight's story begins on a cold December night. A trucker alone on the road, just one last delivery before retirement. Nothing seemed unusual. Just another package, just another stop. But what waited for him at the end of that dark highway was a man with a past, a secret, and a truth that would shake him to the core. This is not just a story about a delivery. It's about redemption. It's about legacy. It's about how one small act, forgotten by the man who made it, changed the course of a life forever. So sit back and listen closely, because by the time the story ends, you might just believe in miracles again. The engine rumbled beneath him like a tired old friend. Tom Whitaker squinted through the windshield as freezing rain smeared across the glass, the wipers barely keeping up. It was nearly midnight, and most of the small towns he passed were already asleep. Tom was 63. He'd driven trucks most of his life. Long haul, local routes, graveyard shifts. If it had wheels and a box, he'd steered it through every corner of the country. But this was his last route. After tonight, he was handing in his keys. Retiring. Not that he had much to retire to. His wife, Gloria, had passed 3 winters ago. Cancer. The house they once filled with laughter now echoed with silence. His daughter, Carly, lived in Oregon, a nurse, raising 2 kids on her own. They talked, sure, but Tom never wanted to burden her with his loneliness. He just kept driving. It was easier that way. But tonight's delivery was different. The job had come through late, last minute. No return address. A single box, no heavier than a loaf of bread. Marked urgent in bold red. Tom could have refused. It wasn't even on his usual route. But something about it tugged at him. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe he just didn't want to go home to an empty house on his last night on the job. He looked at the label again. No company name. Just a handwritten address in rural Vermont, nearly 3 hours off his usual route. Strange, but he'd done stranger. With a sigh, he shifted gears and merged back onto the slick highway, headlights cutting through the mist. Hours passed. Snow began to fall in thick, slow flakes. The roads narrowed. Street lights vanished. Eventually, he was crawling up a winding mountain lane, trees leaning in from both sides like silent watchers. His GPS flickered and died. He grunted. Finally, he saw it, an old iron gate creaking in the wind. Beyond it, a narrow path led to a large estate that looked like it belonged in a movie. 3 stories tall, stone walls, wide balconies, and massive windows glowing with soft, golden light. He hesitated. This was the address? Tom climbed out of the truck, boots crunching on fresh snow. He pulled the package from the cab. Light, wrapped in plain brown paper, but sealed tight. As he stepped through the gate, it swung open on its own. Weird. He walked slowly toward the front door. Before he could knock, it creaked open. Standing there was a man, maybe in his mid-40s, wearing a sweater and jeans, his hair neatly combed back. But it was his eyes that caught Tom. They were kind and deeply sad. "You must be Tom," the man said quietly. Tom blinked. "Yeah. How'd you? I've been waiting for you." The man stepped aside. "Come in, please. I have coffee ready." Tom hesitated. Every instinct told him this was strange. But something else, something deeper, told him to trust it. He stepped inside. The house was warm. Soft music played in the background. A fire crackled in the massive stone hearth. "I'm Daniel," the man said, pouring 2 mugs of coffee. "You've driven a long way. Seat, please." Tom finally spoke. "Look, I don't know what this is about. I just got a call from dispatch saying to deliver this here. No details." Daniel took the package gently, setting it on the coffee table, but not opening it. "I know, and thank you. Truly." There was silence for a long moment. Then Tom asked, "Why me? Why this route? You could have used any service." Daniel looked into the fire. His voice was soft. "Because 27 years ago, someone delivered something to me that changed my life. And tonight, I wanted to return the favor. Tom frowned. I don't understand. Daniel turned to face him. You were the driver, weren't you? 1998, a stormy night. A foster home in rural Pennsylvania. You brought a box labeled Keep Safe. You gave it to a scared little boy with no one else in the world. Tom's heart stopped. I was that boy. He felt dizzy. A memory flickered. A young kid, shivering in oversized clothes, staring up at him with wide, scared eyes. He had delivered boxes to shelters and homes for years, but some stuck with him. That boy had. I didn't know, Tom whispered. Daniel smiled gently. Of course not. But I never forgot you. You smiled at me. Call me champ. Told me. It gets better. I held on to that. Tom swallowed hard, emotions tightening in his throat. I made it, Tom. I got adopted. Went to school. Started a company. I've done well, but I never forgot that night. And now, he looked down at the package. I want to give something back. Tom's voice cracked. I didn't do anything special. Daniel looked at him with tears in his eyes. You did more than you'll ever know. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow fell heavier. Then Daniel stood. But that's just the beginning, Tom. Tom sat frozen in the warmth of the room, the echoes of Daniel's words ringing louder than the wind howling outside. I want to give something back. He had driven through nights before. He had delivered everything from furniture to sympathy flowers. But never something like this. Daniel stepped out of the room briefly, returning with an old, worn photograph in a delicate wooden frame. He handed it to Tom. It was a picture of a young boy, maybe 9 or 10, holding a battered stuffed animal, sitting on the steps of what looked like a foster home. Standing behind him was a much younger Tom. Same cap, same tired but gentle smile. I found this picture years ago, Daniel said. Someone at the home took it the day you delivered that package. I kept it. It reminded me that someone out there cared. Tom's throat tightened. He had no memory of the photo being taken. He was just doing his job. Just a delivery. I didn't know what was in that box, Daniel continued. But I remember tearing it open. Inside were small things, a wool blanket, a toy, a letter. The kind of stuff most kids take for granted. But I didn't have anything. Not even socks without holes. I slept with that blanket every night until I was 15. Tom stared at the boy in the photo. Time had passed, yet that child's face still carried pain and hope. I was at my lowest, Daniel said, his voice cracking. And you were the first stranger who didn't treat me like I was invisible. You saw me. That mattered. Tom blinked rapidly, wiping his eyes. I never knew. I never thought anyone remembered me after I drove off. Daniel sat beside him now, clasping his hands. I remembered. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I'd find you. And when I learned you were still driving, even past retirement age, I arranged this. I wanted your last delivery to mean something. Tom looked away, swallowing hard. My wife passed a few years ago. I kept driving because I didn't know how to stop. She was my whole world. Daniel nodded slowly. I know what it's like to lose the only person who makes the world make sense. There was a pause. Then Daniel stood and walked toward the package Tom had delivered. With care, he peeled back the brown wrapping and opened the lid. Inside was a set of papers and a key. Tom leaned in, confused. I've been watching, Tom, Daniel said gently. Not in a creepy way. I just wanted to know what kind of life the man who helped me had. You've lived quietly. Humbly. Too humbly. Daniel handed him the papers. What is this? Tom asked, eyes scanning the documents. Deed papers, Daniel said, to a small lake house in Oregon. It's paid for, and the key is to the front door. Tom's hands trembled. I know your daughter lives there. I know you haven't seen your grandkids in over 2 years. This place, it's 15 minutes from them. Tom looked up, stunned. You're giving me a house? Daniel nodded. It's yours. Forever. No strings. And that's not all. He picked up a second envelope from the package and handed it over. Tom opened it slowly. Inside was a check. And when he saw the amount, his heart stopped. $200,000, Daniel said quietly. to live, to breathe, to finally rest. Tom stared at the paper, unable to speak. This is too much. I can't. You can, Daniel said, because 27 years ago, you gave me the strength to believe I mattered. And now, it's your turn. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes. He looked around the room. The fire, the photograph, the quiet music, all of it surreal. I was just doing my job. Daniel stepped closer. And sometimes, just doing your job saves someone's life. A long silence filled the room, soft and sacred. Then Daniel smiled. There's one more thing. He walked to a nearby drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside, it was the very stuffed animal from the photo, a little bear with one missing eye. I kept it all these years, even when I had nothing else. Tom chuckled through his tears. I remember that little guy. He was from a package you brought. The note inside just said, "For the hard days." Daniel handed the bear to Tom, who cradled it gently. I don't know who put that box together all those years ago, Tom said. Could have been a charity. Could have been anyone. But you were the one who brought it to my hands, Daniel replied. You were the bridge. Tom's voice shook. You don't know what this means to me. I thought I'd just fade out, like most old truckers. No one waiting at the finish line. Daniel smiled through his own tears. There's always someone waiting, Tom. Sometimes you just don't know it yet. Tom looked down at the check, the deed, the little bear, and then back at Daniel. I don't know how to thank you. Daniel shook his head. You already did. 27 years ago. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sky was clearing. For the first time in a long while, Tom felt something lift. The weight of loneliness, of grief, of invisible years spent in quiet service. He felt seen. Daniel stood and placed a hand on his shoulder. Stay the night. There's a guest room upstairs. Warm bed, clean sheets. Tomorrow, we'll have breakfast, and then I'll help you get to Oregon. I already spoke with Carly. She's waiting. Tom blinked. You talked to my daughter? Daniel smiled. She cried. Said she couldn't believe this was happening. She thought you'd never stop driving. Tom laughed, choked with emotion. Neither did I. The two men stood there, a boy from the past and the man who unknowingly changed his life, facing each other with something rare and beautiful between them. Hope. Morning light filtered softly through the curtains as Tom awoke. For a moment, he wasn't sure where he was. Then he heard the sound of quiet humming. Daniel cooking breakfast downstairs. Tom sat up, still holding the little stuffed bear from the night before. A sense of peace washed over him. Not the kind that comes from silence, but the kind that comes when someone finally says, you mattered. He got dressed, folded the guest bed neatly, and walked downstairs. Daniel stood in the kitchen, flipping pancakes. Hope you're hungry, he said with a grin. Tom chuckled. I haven't had anyone cook for me in a long time. They ate in comfortable silence. Then Daniel cleared his throat. There's something else I want to show you before you go. He led Tom into a small study, where a wall was covered in framed photos, letters, and clippings. At the center was the same childhood photo, young Daniel with the bear, young Tom in the background. But around it were dozens of others, smiling children, group photos from schools, news articles about donation drives, scholarship winners, and handwritten thank you notes. This, Daniel said, motioning to the wall, is the Bridge Foundation. I started it in honor of that box. We've helped over 15,000 foster kids get essentials, education, and hope. Tom stared in awe. All of this because of that one package. Daniel nodded. You lit a spark. I carry it forward, and now it's a fire. Tom was overwhelmed. For decades, he thought he was just a driver, just a man trying to get through life, mile after mile. But standing here, he realized he had unknowingly carved a legacy into the world. I'm taking you to the airport in 2 hours, Daniel said. Carly's going to be there when you land. She knows everything. She's waiting with your grandkids. Tom's hands trembled again. This feels like a dream. Daniel smiled. It's real, and you deserve every second of it. As they stood at the front door, Ready to part ways, Daniel held out one more envelope. Tom gave him a wary look. "What now?" Daniel laughed. "It's just a letter. I wrote it last night. For when you get to your new place. Promise me you'll read it once you're settled in." Tom nodded, tucking it into his coat pocket. They hugged tightly, not like strangers, but like family. The kind built not by blood, but by kindness, by impact, by quiet, unrecognized acts that change the world in unseen ways. As Tom walked toward the car with his few belongings, Daniel called out, "Don't forget to rest, old man. No more night deliveries." Tom turned, grinning through tears. "Only deliveries I'm making now are hugs for those grandkids." They both laughed, and then Tom got in a car. The flight was short, but every second was heavy with anticipation. When he stepped off the plane in Oregon, he didn't expect a welcome. He wasn't prepared for what he saw. His daughter, Carly, stood there, eyes already red, holding her two children, a little boy and girl with arms outstretched. "Grandpa," they shouted. Tom dropped everything and ran to them, falling to his knees and gathering them in a trembling embrace. Carly joined in, whispering, "I missed you, Dad. I've been waiting so long." "I'm here now," Tom said, voice cracking, "and I'm not going anywhere." Later that evening, as he sat by the fireplace in the cozy lake house, the one Daniel had given him, Tom remembered the letter. He opened it slowly. "Dear Tom, if you're reading this, you're home. Not just in a house, but where you belong, surrounded by love, finally resting after decades of giving. I want you to know that you didn't just deliver a box. You delivered hope. You gave a child a reason to keep believing when everything felt lost. And that child grew up trying to be worthy of that kindness. Thank you for not ignoring me. Thank you for showing up. You were my miracle, and now I hope I've returned the favor." With eternal gratitude, Daniel Tom folded the letter and pressed it to his heart. Silent tears fell, not from pain, but from healing. Outside, snowflakes began to fall again, gentle and slow. Inside, laughter echoed from the kitchen as his grandkids baked cookies and Carly poured cocoa. Tom smiled, finally at peace. For the first time in years, he wasn't just passing through. He was home, and that was the story of a man who drove through the night thinking he had nothing left to give, only to discover he had already given more than he ever knew. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that the smallest kindness can echo through time. Be sure to subscribe to Comeback Tales for more powerful, true-to-life stories that prove it's never too late for a second chance or a beautiful ending. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, sometimes the comeback is greater than the setback.